Ever notice how salesmen used to be experts and today they're basically just clerks? You'd walk into a store in the 80s or 90s and the guy selling you shoes, guitars, or even video games actually knew what he was talking about. Now, half the time, they look it up on their phone, just like you. What happened to the salesman? In this episode, we're exploring the lost art of the salesman, when selling was a real profession, not just a summer job. I'll share stories of salesmen I remember, compare them versus now, and dig into what this shift says about our society. Did we gain more independence or lose something important along the way? I'm Amiel Cohen, and I make sense of life's complexity. Instead of easy slogans or black and white answers, I'll show you the bigger picture so the world finally feels clear. The other day I was watching an old Nintendo's training video from 1991. It was made for salesmen, the kind of thing you'd never watch unless you'd stumbled across it online. But what struck me wasn't the video games or even the goofy 90s production. It was the salesmen themselves. They looked sharp. They sounded professional. Selling Nintendo video games, of all things, came across like a real job, a profession. And it hit me. I remember when salesmen did feel like professionals. Not experts at the level of doctors or professors, but not far off either. They carried themselves with pride. They knew their products inside and out, and you could really trust that they knew what they were talking about. Today, that world feels like it's gone. When I was a kid, there was a shoe store near me called Joplin's Bootery. I'll never forget the man who ran it. He wasn't just polite and helpful. He made you feel like he had personally invented sneakers. He knew everything about shoes, and he had been there for years along with the rest of the staff. Going there felt almost like visiting a specialist's office. Years later, in 1999, I bought my first electric guitar, and the salesman who helped me, he wasn't just ringing me up. He really understood guitars, explained the differences between models, and made me feel confident I was getting the right one. It was fun, and it was reassuring. And then there was my brother's story. He wanted to take saxophone lessons, so we went to Sam Esch Music. The staff there gave him a number of a saxophone teacher they recommended, a man named Prameek Tubbs. Prameek wasn't just any teacher. He was a phenomenal player who had recorded on major albums. And the reason they knew him? Because not long before, he had been a salesman at that very store. Imagine that. You walk into a music store, and the guy who might help you pick out the saxophone could also be the guy laying down tracks on a professional record. That's the kind of world it used to be. Compare that to today. You walk into a shoe store or a big box retailer, and the salesman looks like he started the job last week. Because maybe he did. You ask a question about torque versus horsepower at a car dealership, or about the differences between two TV models at Best Buy, and what do you hear? I don't know. Let me look it up. The whole role has changed. Back then, the salesmen were connoisseurs. They weren't world-class experts, but they were professionals who had been in one place long enough to really know their stuff. Today's salespeople are more like clerks. They scan barcodes, process returns, and float between departments. It feels less like a professional and more like a summer job. It's like going from a doctor to a Starbucks barista. That's how drastic the difference feels. And it's not just salesmen. It's the same hollowing out that happened across other jobs too. Travel agents gave way to websites and apps. Video rental clerks gave way to Netflix algorithms. Butchers, tailors, shoe fitters. Most of that expertise collapsed into supermarkets, fast fashion, and online shopping. What used to be respected middle-tier professions either disappeared or got split into two directions. Low-end clerks on one side and ultra-specialized high-end experts on the other. The middle is gone. Now, there are benefits to this. Back then, if you didn't trust your salesman, you were out of luck. Today, You can read hundreds of reviews, compare prices instantly, and watch hours of YouTube demos before you ever spend a dime. That's liberating. It's safer. I don't think I'll ever buy something big like a stereo or a car today without doing my own research. And honestly, I enjoy that process. But something's missing. Because when you walked into a store back then, you weren't just shopping. You were learning. You were connecting. You were encountering expertise in an everyday place. That gave the whole experience a kind of trust and warmth that's hard to find today. So what's better? In some ways, today is, because we're more independent, less at the mercy of one person's bias. But in other ways, the old world was richer. The salesman wasn't just a clerk. He was an advisor, a guide, and maybe even a mentor. The art has all but disappeared. And maybe the real question is, would you trade some of today's independence for the warmth and trust of human expertise? Or is the trade permanent and the salesman as a true profession gone for good? I'm Amiel Cohen, and I help people connect the puzzle pieces of life to make sense of where we've been, who we are, and where we're going. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who still remembers the old school salesman. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.